But you're gonna put it quickly. You. Yes. They're really good. That's good. It's right. It's well.
Yeah,
It's better than
they did an
steaks.
informal conversation, maybe, I think they finished that one. Very kind of review and then. It's really interesting, unusual.
Yeah.
Use.
Oh, those are for everybody. Yeah. Sorry, that's the only one that I could get. I couldn't get any more than that.
There's two more.
There's two here,
Oh,
I've
good.
got one at home, here.
Or you already have one.
You guys are there.
Is it the same?
Is that the one that Tom Clancy sends
Yeah.
around to?
Yep, it's from Clancy.
It's fall.
Okay, so yeah, okay.
He gets them twice a year.
Yeah.
Are we good to go, Erin?
Yes, it's just 7. Report for you.
All right, set. All right, welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I'd like to call to order this Thursday, April 4th, 2024 meeting of the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission. 7 o'clock. Present tonight, we have Secretary John Duza, Vice Chair Bob Reinhardt, Mike Bugda, Andy Rubin, myself, Carol Snow, Chair, Janet Peckinpah, John Morgan, Jeff Towns, and our town planner, Aaron Mannix. Zooming in from Washington is Bob O'Connor. This being our first meeting of the month, we focus on the plan of conservation and development, but we have one business item on the agenda first to take care of. We hope it goes quickly. So I'd like to start then with 24-07, 63 Middle Beach Road West, map 15, lot 24, zone R4. The owner is Earl Tucker and Family Third and Family Trust LLC, applicant Ronald Wassmer. It's a coastal site plan application to permit construction of terraces and retaining walls within 25 feet of a coastal resource. It was tabled from the March 21st meeting in part because we just got a response from Deep at like 5 o'clock that afternoon. I think we've all had a chance to look at that, and basically just a quick summary that they said it was really up to us to decide whether these walls were significant in terms of erosion control. So with that said, we realized that what we really need is input from engineers. So I don't know, have you all brought your engineer? Oh, yay, great, welcome.
Evening, for the record, my name is Ronald Wasmer. I'm a professional engineer. I'm a land surveyor. My office is in Milford, Connecticut. I'm going to pass out a few pictures. I have maybe half a dozen of them, so you might have to share.
You can share.
You can share.
Oh, they're
You
the same.
guys, you guys, is there any more? I have a couple extra. Do you want to- One more if you need it. I just want to keep one so I know what I'm talking about when I do it. I typed up a brief response this afternoon. I'm just going to read it. It's a lot of, I won't say technical, but it's kind of dealing with technical topics.
Okay.
So it's my understanding the commission would like to discuss the walls constructed on the property. So I'll just start out. In my professional opinion, the walls function as landscape walls. Generally is a demarcation between adjoining residential properties to the east and to the west. These walls were not constructed as shoreline flood and erosion control structures. The concrete seawall along the shoreline was constructed many years ago. It extends easterly and westerly along several of the adjoining properties. This seawall was not constructed by the applicant. So now in support of my opinion, I have some maps that I want to, and pictures that I want to talk about. First, I kind of just want to talk about FEMA and their mapping. And I'm going to jump ahead a sentence or two, but basically say that, you know, FEMA has to map the entire United States. So they have a pretty broad stroke of the brush. In support of what I'm going to say, one of the top pictures that you have is the FEMA flood map. The red dot in the middle is 63 Middle Beach Road. And then if you notice to the right side of the map, which is to the east, you'll see a line that's labeled 53. It's a dashed line, runs north and south. So this is a transect. What FEMA does is they do transects every so often along the shoreline to do a detailed analysis is to determine the flood zone. And then just to elaborate on their broad brush of the stroke, there's the next transect westerly is number 52, which is about 7,000 feet away. And it doesn't show up in the map because I didn't plot a map that broad.
Wide.
And then the one to the east is over near Fence Creek. So that's, again, about 7,000 feet. So then I'm going to flip to the next picture. This is a Google Earth. So the transect number 53 kind of runs towards where it says Winebrook Lane, you know, runs through the sound, north and south. And you'll notice it's much more of a beach area over there. So this picture is from 2018, and I copied it because it shows the features clearly. Some of the Google Earth now is
High
it's
tide.
high tide. So what I want to point out is there's a significant rock formation immediately to the south of the property, and it extends both east and west for several parcels. You'll also see there's several jetties jutting out into the east, jutting out into the sound, and of course the wharf at the end of Wharf Road. I mentioned the transects. So the subject property, as well as the adjoining properties, has much greater protection from flooding and erosion compared to where FEMA did their transect. This is as a result of the natural rock formation and the jetties that were built many years ago. So these jetties. So that's just kind of a description is, you know, FEMA says, here's a flood zone. I don't question that the property's in a flood zone. But it's possible that if you did a detailed analysis, you did a transect over that rock outcrop and took into consideration the seawalls that are there, they might have a slightly different flood zone than what they came up with.
This is AE, right, not VE?
Correct.
It's close to VE, but
It's
it's not
close to
because,
VE.
and that is protects it, that's one protected.
But Ron, could you explain the the limit of moderate wave action that brings this property into the
So
regulatory?
it is, in what Aaron said, a limited wave action. So that means that the structure has to be built in accordance with the VE requirements.
Right.
Which it was. The house is built on piles, and then the piles are connected with the foundation to piers, and then the walls are breakaway walls. So, and all the living spaces up on the next higher floor.
When you say the walls are breakaway, though, you mean the walls of the.
So in between the concrete piers, the piers are made.
Of the house, yeah.
Yes,
First.
of the
First,
house, yes.
okay.
So now I have a couple pictures that I took earlier in the year when we got started on this. The first picture is the rear of the subject property looking to the southeast. That's this picture with the two flagpoles in it. The wall constructed by the applicants in the foreground. You can also notice the wall beyond the second flagpole as well as the jetties further beyond and the rock outcrop. This easterly wall extends. The neighbor's easterly wall extends above the lawn. The storms that would cause the most damage or the most impact to this property and the neighboring properties would most likely come from the southeast, hurricanes coming up the coast. And impacts of this storm would be reduced by the jetties and the walls east of our property. Thus, the walls are not functioning as erosion control structures. That's the newer walls built on our client's property. Also notice the height of the wall built by the applicant is generally the same height as the existing walls and therefore not causing any harm to the adjoining properties.
How far below grade is the wall?
It varies. You can see from the picture, it extends about 18 inches above. It varies. So right here, there's literally no change between the topography on both sides. The topography is a little bit lower, but that's out of the V zone. And it's generally because the topography on the neighboring property undulates a little bit. Okay. I'm almost done. The last picture, one more page. This is looking to the southwest. It shows the two existing seawalls that were built prior to our client taking the property. And it shows the newer wall that was built. Now, it's difficult to see that wall. It's just beyond that concrete block. And you'll see that it's flush with the ground. It's flush with the ground for about the first 25 feet. My understanding is that when Aaron mentioned to Earl that the other wall was built and it could be a problem that he stopped. He was working on this side, so he didn't drop back there. Both landscape walls extend from the rear towards the street. The wall is part of a finished terrace that's used in aiding access to the entrance of the house, as well as supporting the finished terrace. So I just want to say one more time for the record. In summary, you'll see these pictures function primarily as landscape walls, and in some instances supporting the finished terrace, do not serve as erosion control structures. So that was where I was at 4 o'clock this afternoon. And then I received another email where Aaron spoke to the city engineer or
Right.
town engineer.
Right.
And he referred to a section of your floodplain management.
Ordinance, yeah.
Yeah, and it specifically made some comments about placing fill on the property. So I read through the questions. I'm going to respond to the questions. It's a little bit more chopped up. But the first question is the fill is not used as structural support for the house. The structure is supported by piles incorporating concrete footings. The fill that was brought onto the site is minor in volume. The fill is used around the buildings in walkways to aid access to the house and the parking area. The fill decreases in thickness as the parking area approaches the street to basically zero thickness. The fill is also used for drainage purposes. The fill along the walkways is not compact and could wash out from a storm surge. The fill would not generate any excess loads on the building for a couple of different reasons, but one of them is the breakaway panels. So they're intended to break away with 15 pounds of force per square foot. So if a wave hit the house, it would cause the breakaway panel to fall versus causing structural damage to the house. The fill is not above the existing seawall to the rear and therefore will not cause any ramping or wave deflection. My observations of the fill is that a sandy soil does not have a tendency for excessive compaction. The volume of fill and the distribution of fill will not cause any wave deflection. And the fill was not constructed in a slope and therefore will not cause any wave run up or ramp. And I think that addresses all the questions that were posed in that section of the regulations. So with that, I'll be quiet. If you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. I just will say in summary, 100% finished with the house. The moving trucks, I think, are sitting around the corner somewhere. They're anxious to move in, so you guys can vote on this.
So could you explain maybe a little bit more about the construction of the wall itself, how deep down into the
They
ground?
do have a footing, yes,
There's a footing, a concrete footing,
yes, concrete footing.
and they're not made to break away. And do they have drains at all?
There's no weep holes.
No weep holes or anything? Okay.
The soil on there is a height to the terrace. It's less than 18 inches, so it's not it's not this tall along the neighbor's property.
Yeah, it's 18 inches, but then it, like down by the driveway, it is a little bit because the
So the-
land slopes
Oh,
down.
your
toward-
zoning regulations talk about a finished terrace, and the finished terrace is 18 inches. So in some places, the walls are taller than the 18 inches, but the difference between the grade on both sides. Now, towards the street, there's no threat of wave action.
Right.
Really, the biggest threat for the wave action is going to be impacted by the existing seawalls that were built many years ago.
Yeah. And there's even one that goes perpendicular, as I saw, I think on one of the,
Yeah, it could be on Google Earth.
yeah. I think it comes into your property, sort of in front of your flagpole, maybe, it's an old one. So,
Yes.
so in addition to the rocks, there's also a perpendicular seawall kind of going
Yes.
across there. Yeah, so I wanted to add too that thanks for your explanation about FEMA, but, and two of us have just happened coincidentally to attend a FEMA presentation.
Okay.
I think it was last week, Bob? About erosion and the new models for erosion that they put into place. And I guess they've done, this group has done all of New England up past Portland, Maine, and now down to Connecticut. So they're just giving the presentations about the Connecticut shoreline and
Yeah, FEMA's been doing
Like
a lot
with the
of work,
house.
so they adopted their
yeah,
regulations in the 70s and they stayed status quo
right.
until like 2010.
Um,
So I did sort of alter my staff report and things based off of conversations with John Yanako
right.
and anticipating
Town engineer.
that Ron would be in attendance this evening as well. And so the question really was, and I think Ron gave a good presentation with his professional opinion, at least to guide you a little bit of his opinion on the determination of a landscaping feature versus a shoreline flood and erosion control structure.
Right,
The Coastal Management Act does kind of speak to that very broadly. So really that discretion comes down to the commission. And then on top of that would be the compliance with our floodplain ordinance, which I would assume, Ron, you're going to follow up with
Sure, I can.
your letter
I can send that to
with
you
John
tomorrow. that
as
you
well.
Give to your city
So-
engineer.
Right, and that would be because it's relevant to the final compliance because of that, the site grading and the retaining walls were not included in the original floodplain, the permit with John. So these site changes, having that information and our ordinance changed from the time of issuing the permit for the house. A revised ordinance was adopted last summer, just under a year ago. And so it was more to adopt the model regulations from the state. So one option, I know that there's an interest to kind of expedite permit process here, approval process, if the commission is willing. If you prefer, you can absolutely wait for the town engineer to provide you with a memo that says Mr. Wasmer has addressed his, the requirements in this particular section of the floodplain ordinance. Or I did draft language as a condition that if you're comfortable, you can add that as a condition of your approval, that prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance, the applicant can provide to the zoning enforcement officer verification from the floodplain administrator that all landscape activities as constructed and shown in the application documents comply with the town of Madison floodplain ordinance. So that's an option as well for you.
Yeah, great. I mean, I did go to the ordinance and see, and you've addressed all the points, I think, that's in the relevant paragraph about the type of the soil and what will happen with it. I appreciate your getting that together within such a short time for us tonight.
I was a little, I don't know, flabbergasted, or it's probably a better word, when I read it, but then after I read it 2 or 3 times, I was like, well, I can answer this question.
Good. Yeah.
It's not well written. John and I, and I think the language is taken straight from the model regs,
Yeah.
which is, but it's,
They don't read like a novel, do you?
No, they don't read like that.
no, and it's not, I don't know, it's,
But you can see what the
We went
concerns
back and
are,
forth
and you've
as well.
addressed those concerns, I think. I don't know, how does everyone else feel?
I think as long as we make it conditional.
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
John, is that you
I agree.
comfortable with that? Okay. Bob O'Connor? Good. Okay. Janet,
yes, man.
are you ready to
I'm
read?
Oh, okay. You're so good at it,
I
Jan.
think we're good. So we'll move to accept with the following conditions. And we have, Aaron has provided us with a draft resolution.
There was
In
another
that
condition.
direction.
You added another condition, though, right?
It's in here.
It's okay.
It's already in.
So yes, who's going to read that part? Was that in the original?
It's,
Oh,
yes,
it is?
yep, it's right on your form.
The Madison Planning and Zoning Commission approves application number 2407, 63 Middle Beach Road West, map 15, lot 24, zone R4, owner Earl W. Tucker III, Family Trust LLC, applicant Ron Wasmer, coastal site plan application to permit construction of terraces and retaining walls within 25 feet of a coastal resource with the following conditions. 1, that the zoning enforcement officer be notified at least 48 hours prior to commencement of any regulated activity. 2, that all erosion and sedimentation controls be installed prior to any site disturbance and be maintained for the duration of construction activities and until the site is sufficiently stabilized for the satisfaction of the zoning enforcement officer. 3, that prior to the issuance of a certificate of zoning compliance, the applicant shall provide to the zoning enforcement officer verification from the flood plan administrator that all landscape activities as constructed and shown in the application documents comply with the Town of Madison floodplain ordinance. In the event that changes to the approved plans are required as a result of other agency permitting to support the proposed activity, the Madison Planning and Zoning Commission reserves the right to review said changes and may require modification of this approval. This approval is made based upon the finding the proposed use is a permitted use in the district and that the standards, prerequisites, and conditions specified by the regulations have been met. The commission further finds the proposal consistent with all applicable goals and policies in the Coastal Management Act and Section 25 of the Madison zoning regulations. The applicant's effort to maintain adequate soil and erosion controls during construction activities reduces potential impacts to on-site and adjacent coastal resources. The effective date of this approval is April 11th, 2020.
Thank you, Janet. If I have a second? Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Oh, thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks for your patience.
Thank you very much.
Happy move.
Thank you.
You say move that, Bob?
Thanks, sir.
Thank you very much. Bye.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Right, so, moving right along, we'll jump into the planning conservation and development update. Thank you, all the commissioners who have had some feedback and requests, and nothing is too detailed, Janet, or nitpicky, John. I agree with that photo of the library. I think that it would be great if we could get an
That's
up-to-date
the
image.
easy fix.
And not a construction site. So no comments are too small or too big. And I think that we'd like to keep it open until Monday for the commissioners. If anyone else has any other thoughts or comments or criticisms or changes or edits or anything, we've all been kind of working on it in different levels. I know I've been trying to aim for consistency throughout, and it's kind of an ongoing process, but I think it's getting better and better. Erin, do you want to, I don't know if you have the latest draft we could pull up?
I
and-
can pull up the one that
And Zoe
we've
is
all been
here.
working from. Yeah, John is not here this evening. Zoe is here from Tyche to
Tyche.
kind of join, as a second set of eyes here and ears to jot down notes for all of you. We did meet earlier today, with John to kind of go through our how we should move forward. We did receive, as Carol said, we received quite a bit of feedback from several commissioners, mostly, grammar kind of things, a few more substantive, but just kind of listing pages, noting things, just in an email format. That's absolutely fine. We've passed that along to Zoe and John and Rachel, and they've been kind of, so they're collecting those comments. They've made some, they're going to review things, and then there she is, essentially put together, the final incorporating all of your comments, hopefully one to post and prepare for the public comment period. I had floated around some dates. John had a couple of dates in June. As you're aware, it's a 65-day referral period for public comment. And so there are no changes that are made to the document within those 65 days. It gives an opportunity, plenty of time for folks to read through the plan ahead of any public comment, public hearing period. So we had looked, counted off 65 days from, it got us into June. The days that worked for John didn't necessarily work for all of our commissioners. So we're now hoping that we can schedule the public hearing for your regularly scheduled meeting on July 11th, which is more than 65 days from now. It's after the 4th of July holiday, but hopefully we'll have the majority of members available.
Erin, also you've sent out copies of the draft to stakeholders again, sort of.
I did. So after our
Around,
last
yeah.
meeting, I followed up, all the folks who are responsible for implementing the plan. I wanted to make sure that they saw their name
They
in
said,
the
okay.
implementation table right before we sent it out for public comment. And so, that all of those entities have received a copy of the draft you were working off of. Clearly, if there are some minor changes here and there to that plan, those would be reflected in the revised posting. My thought is that once you have consensus over the document, and if you're willing to schedule that public hearing today, and then whatever your last minute comments are for John, we should be able to have and post the final draft plan for public hearing, in the next week or two, and update your working webpage for the POCD. Talk to with IT to even put just a form to fill out if people had comments that they just wanted to fill out right through the webpage. That comes via email so that we can start just collecting public comment. If people may not be away, but it gives us plenty of time to be able to push the document and share it wherever across all of our many platforms here that we can do that. And then Peggy had requested that Carol or I or both attend the April 29th Board of Selectmen meeting just to update the board on their, on this latest draft, which really isn't much different from your last
Previous
conversation with them, but at least it's pretty with pictures, and you can share the public hearing dates and invite them to attend as well. Let's see, as far as otherwise, practice-wise, we had talked a little bit, John, Bob, you mentioned some questions of how a presentation would go. I know we have plenty of time to kind of work that out. But John did agree that Tyche could do a presentation, prepare PowerPoint, But we thought that it probably was appropriate for Carol to, begin the meeting, introduce folks to how the whole process has gone. How you got to where you are, which could take a little time since it's been a 20-month process here. And then be able to pass it over to John and his team to run through the PowerPoint itself. So I'm happy to pull it up. I don't know how you want, if anybody wanted to go through anything or comment, I don't know how detailed you want to get
I wanted
today.
to welcome Zoe. Zoe, I don't know if we've met you or if you've met all of us. But did you have anything else you wanted to add to the process? I know anytime we make any substantial changes, the formatting gets thrown out of whack and all the beautiful images and maps. I know because I struggled with it myself.
Yes, so the recommendation is to just write your comments in an email and
Right.
now let the formatting end of it
Definitely.
go through John and Zoe and Rachel.
Yeah, that'll be the best way, just to make sure that, well, A, so that it doesn't, we're not fixing formatting when we should be focusing on the comments, and B, that way we don't miss anything when we're going through it. So, but I think Erin covered all the major points. And yeah, hello, I think this is the first time I'm actually formally introducing myself. I've been a background listener for most of these meetings, so.
But you've been very active in the process behind the scenes. Zoe has done all of your mapping,
Yeah.
all of,
Yeah. And it's looking great.
Those look
We're all
good.
really excited about it.
Thank you.
Any other commissioners? Bob, did you want to say anything about policies, the implementation?
I have a couple of notes on the policies themselves. I have to go through them again. Just trying to not organize, I'm just making some small changes to tighten them up, to make them clearer. And then also discussing the implementation plan is an abundant number of actions that are assigned to the board of selectmen, which I have concern about. And I'm not sure if that's typical or not, but I just think it's gonna end up being so much on the plate that will get done. So I'd like to talk, I'm not gonna go through, I know John had some comments in one of his emails on some of the policies, rewording them. They were the one I agree with, another one I saw, I'd like to propose a small change to it. And then also some of just, is it policy A really?
Erin, could you pull them up? Because we don't have.
I can go through each one, it's not.
Yes, I will. I just didn't want to, while Zoe was talking, I do have it.
And then we'll open it up for.
The other thing too is we've never, as a group, gone through each one and say, yes, we all agree, but we all understand what the policy is. And you know, you say you do and you not agree, but we do that as a group. I think that it's all, assuming everyone read it, but like everyone.
This is our chance to
Yeah, this is it, speak now.
give our verbal approval. Yeah.
You can just go straight to page, everything else, everything we talked about can be reflected back in the other ones. But we go straight to page 48.
Sure.
So Bob, are you gonna follow these in an email for,
I think we all need to agree, I'm not gonna give it to John, because it's not John's decision, change I wanna make. We need to agree to it as a commission that this is what we should tell John. Otherwise, these are
Yeah, I see it.
substantial enough that we all need to make some are subtle, but they're substantial.
okay,
So,
That's nice.
and John, I'm gonna steal some of the things you
Sure.
said,
Yep.
but I'm sure I'm gonna miss a couple of them, so just jump in.
I'll jump in.
And anyone else, so I just wanna go through, so policy A, I think policy is fine, the first one, create a downtown development plan. I think we should strike the building upon the 2005 Bradley Road vision study, anything that's 20 years old, to me is no longer all that relevant. You can't build upon a 20-year-old plan, if it hasn't already been approved. So I would just say take that. And then within, and make a number C, which is as part of the following must be considered, recommendations in the original Bradley Road vision should be considered in that downtown development plan. So subservient, make it subservient to the actual strategy for both. And I'll give you the specifics on how to write that out.
I don't, yeah, I would just like to tell you that I had an hour-long meeting this week with someone who specifically wanted me to pull out the 2005 Bradley Road Vision Study and go through it for potential picking pieces of that up, which, so it is, I do think parts of that are very useful for people. It has not been implemented. Some parts of that can not be implemented because of changes that have happened downtown.
Yep.
But it's worthwhile to reference, so I
agree,
think
agree, so C should
that,
be.
I think that would be sufficient
down
from
to C.
my,
You have
like,
to
staff's
consider it.
perspective
Right,
as
just
a
like that
C.
person asked. That'd be fine. I too found also lots of extra spaces and missing periods, but we'll skip that.
So you're gonna send me language for that C? Okay.
Or anything else tonight too.
Yeah, my notes are a little messy, but I'll type them up. Next one is what John recommended, establish the town as a hub for abundant natural resources. I keep trying to figure out how to make that work, but I can't, and I wrote it. But I think we need to strike that or reword it, but I'm fine with just saying policy B is enhancing connections to nature and Madison. The original intent with that last part was to try to create Madison as a place people come to enjoy the natural.
Could you say that?
See,
That's what I'm saying, you need to reword it, makes no sense. It didn't make any sense to me.
Yeah.
It's in a flurry of editing.
can you read that again? What you,
I would
Thought-
strike establish the town as a hub for abundant natural resources. Or,
Last part of the sentence.
or,
so just leave it as enhanced connections to nature in Madison?
yeah, I think that's,
That's what
Yes,
you
yes.
wrote.
Oh,
Yeah.
can the town be an example of that? A hub implies something much bigger. But Madison, we're talking about Madison, can it
Yeah.
just be an example of how to take advantage of abundant natural resources?
I feel like I wanted to say something.
The way you had said it, as you were explaining the original intent,
Okay, right.
that worked.
Where's
yeah,
the
no,
problem?
I'm trying to re-say it
You,
again.
what?
We're gonna go back, we're taping. We'll go back to
That's
the
right, we can
tape.
go back.
So,
Is the way to do
enhance
that,
connections
Clyde?
to nature and Madison. And, I don't know, utilize the natural resources as an attraction. Create the net, somehow.
We can work on words, if you
Yeah,
put,
leverage the
those
natural
kind of
resources as an
thoughts in.
attraction to bring people to Madison, not just downtown, but everything else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we put that in, that would then lead those who own it to kind of say, okay, how do we turn all the parks here into something that is attractive?
So a model might be another word.
Yeah.
okay, so we can work on
Yeah,
some wording
okay,
for that.
That's, I understand what you all want.
Gotcha.
Under 3 on that policy, 3A, including land acquisition strategy for open space and community facilities. I don't know what community facilities means, and I don't understand why that would be part of open spaces unless that means parks.
Including land acquisition strategy.
But we move things around in a while, so things got messed up.
So some open space, I mean, it could be like beaches, you know,
Yes,
something
it
like
could
that
be
as a
create-
facility.
So instead of facility, I just think facility as a building.
Okay,
So community resources or community something, parentheses, sample parks and.
so B3, all right, so let's see what
Make
we
it
can do.
diverse, generic facilities. Okay, policy C. I would propose we strike and integrate them into public life when possible. And again, I wrote that.
You need to stop reading this.
It doesn't
You know,
mean- it
it's-
doesn't mean anything but.
It's
Monday, up until Monday.
It's true though, Bob, you'll drive yourself, I mean, I just know that from my background, you know, you're just, you'll change it a million times.
Done. This is my last run at it.
This is it's gonna squeeze every last bit out of this.
So I don't know how to implement that. And I don't know what it looks like. My original intent was to try to find a way to make cultural landmarks and the like open to the public for general use, but we talk a lot here about public and private, and then that might just cross that line and make things get stuck. You can't get access to any of the town resources to help preserve a private cultural landmark, because then it has to be open. I don't want to get stuck.
Right.
And I don't want to tie the hands of the people who assigned this to get these things done, so I'm not sure if it adds value. It does in my head, but I'm not sure it adds value as a policy. Talk me out of it.
I think when you add that, it complicates things, it does get you stuck if you know. Right, because there are limitations. to private.
When possible.
When possible,
All
yeah.
fires away.
Yeah, that's right, what it is.
Sometimes
I
it's
kinda
possible.
think-
Okay.
How do you then address the aspect, I think part of this policy was not just the preservation, but also enhancing as one of the particular qualities of town that is so desirable, both from an, you know, and how do we highlight this and publicize some
Well,
of
it
this,
is-
educate people on this?
Yeah, it's
How do
education,
we
it's awareness.
draw in tourism, that kind of thing, and enhance this. So
Yeah.
that's where I think that integration into the
Okay.
public really was.
How about preserve and promote Madison's historic and cultural landmarks?
Yeah, that's great.
Okay.
That works.
That
Yeah,
makes
that
the same point.
reaches it
That's
too.
better. Yeah.
So then it
It's
does become a
simplification of the
public-private.
phrase.
I
That's good, I
think
like
that
that.
public
Yeah,
records
yeah.
are what can
Preserve and
be-
promote.
That would then, now, well, so we use promote Madison's history to residents in number 2.
Yeah.
I think the Historical Society does that already to some degree, and would certainly like to do more of it. And other institutions also do some of that, if I'm not mistaken.
That's item 2. For
Yeah.
Policy C2.
Yeah, okay.
And under that on 1C,
Mhm.
providing support to Madison's working agricultural land, should we move to policy B, I guess, under the open space plan? I think it's disconnect, it's not quite a cultural landmark or historic. It's a working farm or whatnot. Again, I'm afraid it's gonna get assigned to the wrong group.
Enhance connections to
I'm
nature.
not sure where it doesn't seem
I
there.
mean, it kind of overlaps both because most of our
It does.
farms are historic.
It's true, look at it that way, but you're gonna end up with just historic farms.
Yeah,
And that's fine,
you're right.
these are like the disconnects, I wanna make sure we all talk me out of them, I'm fine with that.
Part of, developing an open space, so it incorporated as part of the open space
space.
plan,
That was my initial
add it
thought,
in
but I'm not sure why.
there.
I'm-
Because otherwise it would be a long-range preservation plan. I mean, some of our farms are, you know, historic in nature, but I mean, it could work in open space as well.
That's kind of the intent too, if there's a farm and it's open space now.
It is more the
there's a
green
way
space
to
quality than
preserve,
the
yes, the green space
historic
aspect of it.
structure or a stone wall.
And if
It
the,
is, it's the open space.
the farm is historical, it could also fall under the.
You could make-
But by its nature, it could be
Right.
without
You're right.
having it called out. I mean, we could leave them in both.
No,
places.
I would say just, as Bob said, I would just move C to
3F?
3F,
Okay.
Yeah.
or maybe even higher up.
Well, in
No, I
3
know.
though.
We're not prioritizing, we're just
No.
listing.
Should we have?
That works for me.
Oh. Here we go.
Yeah.
All right, I'm up to D now.
Me
See
too.
how quickly we're done.
Non-T.
Policy D, 3A. There's nothing wrong with that statement. Right? I just have a fundamental disagreement with the idea that we need to put this statement that we will support the enforcement of regulations and call that a specific regulation. It is or it is not a regulation. If it's a regulation, it must be supported. By definition, you can't say, I'm not going to support it unless you want to change it. You can always change it, but you can't not. The law is the law. Right? Can't pick and choose. You can change them. So I just have a fundamental disagreement with that. If you all love it, you can go with it. I brought up once before, I think.
Yeah, I don't really think there's harm in it, leaving it in.
But it's superfluous. It gnaws at my need to edit it out. And then why is that regulation more important than any other regulation we should highlight?
We just went through examples.
Well, this
of
is specific-
ordinances and the- Yeah,
This is specific, ensure that inland wetland integrity is protected under number 3. And so the best way to protect inland wetland integrity is through the enforcement of our regulations. I mean, that's the number one way. And supporting the agency to do that, I think, is important by having staff, educating them, continuing ed, and, you know. I don't know,
I understand that.
maybe should we shorten it to just support the inland wetlands and watercourse agency, not take away the enforcement of regulations, because that's their job.
That's fine.
That's correct. Yeah.
So if we just take off the enforcement of regulations.
Yeah, that works.
And then, you know, I think what you're trying to say, Aaron, is make sure they have the staff, they have
Right.
the expertise, they have the training, which we were recommending that we all support. I think that makes sense. Yeah, you're right. Then it's not us saying, oh, yeah, we approve that you're working on your regulations.
That works in a-
Well, said, yeah. That hasn't changed, right? That's what we talked about.
So Aaron, you're keeping track of these, and then Bob, you're gonna.
I'm gonna- yeah, I'm gonna-
Okay, cool. Great.
Okay, number 5 there. I'm not sure if we need, under the Achieve Silver certification, I'm not sure if we need the A and B. Because I think the idea is that we achieve silver certification, it should be based on what the state says that is. I don't know what's mandated to do that or is required. I don't know if A and B are part of it or in addition to it. Definitely, we can leave them in. To me, it seems somewhat redundant.
I kind of like them the way they are. I think it's nice to call it out in your plan. You want to then create regulations, you know, in development standards or things like that. You can come back to your P O C D and specifically cite that you've identified that as a priority.
Yeah, I kind of like leaving them in.
Okay.
So there be some additional reference to the Sustainable Connecticut objectives that, you know, we list 2. Should there be some reference to imply that there's others, or that do those the main thing to achieve
No,
a
it's
silver
lengthy.
certification?
It's a very lengthy process.
Maybe 5, achieve silver certification for sustainable CT in addition to the state requirements, A and B.
This is a private organization, it's not state.
Okay, in addition to those requirements. Between A and B as well. This one was just a question. I'm good with it. E3.
E3.
I don't understand.
Is this?
I don't understand what that means.
Review major moves.
I think I just need to be,
Municipal
just need to be explained to me.
So what's our policy?
Review major municipal investment.
Prepare our community to be resilient in the face of climate change and future economic and environmental challenges. Review major municipal investments in infrastructure and physical facilities to address vulnerabilities.
So is this future investments that we're building, or is it a retrospective analysis of what we have now? I just don't know. Then I just want to make sure it's clear. It's not, it wasn't clear to me. I wasn't quite sure how to interpret that.
Well, the vulnerabilities would imply that you're looking at the current state
Or future
Or future.
or any
conditions.
future development.
So before you're investing, major municipal investments, you need to make sure that in doing so, we're keeping vulnerability, climate change, resiliency in mind.
Could we rephrase it, say, review major municipal infrastructure and physical facilities to address vulnerabilities, including all future projects? So that would mean look at what we have now, and then apply that same analysis to any future project.
Well, investment implies it's,
Yeah, that's what applies future, but I don't get the. I'm not necessarily. I'm just looking at the way.
I kind of read this as before any new investments, this is how you're assessing. That's how I interpret.
I review it as
That-
new
That's how I.
investment, but not current state, current facilities.
Well, I mean, at the same time, we have a facilities committee now that's established that their role is to assess our current inventory for
So I'm
use,
My
vulnerability, all those
interpretation is
things.
this, if someone came to us and said, okay, I'm gonna accomplish this, I'm gonna put a policy in place that says all future investments must go through this analysis. They would say they're done, I would agree with you, you're done. All future investments have to do this. They're not gonna look to what we currently have to address vulnerabilities. If that's what that's supposed to mean, then it's good. If we want to, the way I'm interpreting it, we want to make sure it covers current facilities, this building, any other building we have, then I think we need to make that explicit. That's all.
So if we added current and future,
Just make it very clear.
Yeah.
All current and future infrastructure and facilities must blah, blah, blah.
I'm okay with that.
If that's what you mean.
If
yeah,
that's what you
because
mean, that's what I'm
both
saying.
current and futures imply, so why not just say it? That's the point. Right?
Investments
Well, it's implied, so why not just say it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. I don't wanna,
in current and future.
should be very specific.
Yeah.
Very clear. Number 4. I will go with what y'all want, but I'm still not sure about that. And how it would be implemented.
And I think I had a comment too about.
Yeah, I kinda- I still-
Particularly the repetitive lost properties, that kind of troubles me. What does that actually mean? If people's houses can't keep getting knocked down and so on, we're gonna buy them from them?
That's what it implies. It
Yes,
implies that.
municipalities do that for
Do we want?
marsh
to do that as-
migration,
Do we still
flood
want to do that as a
control.
No, they do.
municipality?
Yes.
We
It's
do?
part of
That's no
FEMA's
offense.
guidance, yes, it's a real thing that happens to reduce repetitive loss properties that are in vulnerable areas.
Didn't Guilford just do that?
Guilford has,
Yeah, Guilford's
has done
done it.
this.
Yeah, East Haven did it.
Uh-huh.
He saved Richmond.
Branford has done this, yes. So when FEMA has repetitive loss properties, that information is available to the floodplain administrator. There's funding opportunities available to help do that. It's not, we may have very few repetitive loss properties in town, but that would be something that the floodplain administrator would be able to work with FEMA, have that list of those, and then the town can assess that. And their specific location.
I think Bob's question is what is the mechanism for us to implement that? Prevent that from happening again? Is that an approval process from the PLC when someone wants to do something, we say, oh, wait a minute, it's in one of those vulnerable areas, you're gonna get washed out to sea.
It's an opportunity for the Board of Selectmen to move forward with funding to purchase these properties, so they're not.
So they'll have an obligation to review it with the FEMA information so as to assess this property and not do it if it is one of those areas.
And with funding,
It's not. All right, hold on a second.
And when we did talk about it, I think we came to I forget who was in the audience or was we came to an understanding that it would be non-tax-based funding.
right,
That's not going to come from the.
There's
Right.
FEMA money available
Right,
for
so
things
then
like that.
But
Maybe,
FEMA money is tax.
I know, but they're kind of,
Taxpayer money.
and we're posting it on.
not, not out of our,
But not, so maybe we need, maybe to make it clear, it's not even other ones. I have a hard time saying I want to spend the town's tax money on buying a property for repetitive loss. When most of those properties are worth multiple millions of dollars.
I don't think this says use town fund.
But
I mean, this is,
It also doesn't say it, doesn't say not to use it. Again,
It doesn't
I'm getting
exclude
to
it.
this point, it doesn't exclude it like all the other things. It's interpreted, other funds could mean many things.
right.
We just need to
Well, and
be
I guess
clear.
there could be opportunities if you were creating open space or tidal wetlands to use funds. I think part of this is analyzing one, as part of our resiliency plan, where are our vulnerable areas? What are our repetitive loss properties? Does it make sense to put any of these properties on our radar for potential flood control areas as we look at sea level rise and other, opportunities for resiliency?
No, this is serious.
So-
We just in that erosion seminar. and
Yeah.
Their analysis is right. In 20, 30 years, in the moderate case, most of the homes along the coast will be halfway. eroded
Circle
along.
Beach will be gone,
So,
I think.
most all of it.
and in fact,
Well,
there's a
that's-
property on Circle Beach. This kind of,
It's up for sale now.
there's another one, but there's an empty lot that did have a house on it. Erin, I think we discussed it maybe in that context a little bit about, if they come back with another application to rebuild at that site, which is clearly highly vulnerable. And we'll, I don't know about the other houses, especially, well, the houses on stilts and Circle Beach have been reinforced now,
Right.
but and I thought, well, okay, would that be a place for water access? And with the town, if the town owned that little chunk, what to
That's a
do
whole
with
other
it?
question. They have rights to certain rights as a lot if they can meet
Right,
code and go, to develop
well, absolutely,
these.
they could still, but
in
if-
compliance with flood regulations and coastal
right,
zone regulations. But these are, some of these likely more vulnerable properties these are gonna be properties that have not ever updated, brought up to flood
Right.
compliance. Or particularly low-lying areas that really are, shown to be inundated over the next, few decades here. So I think I think it's worthwhile to have this in. It doesn't necessarily, it may not be the highest priority in the implementation table, but it's something to note and would definitely be considered in a climate, or a coastal resiliency plan.
would you feel more comfortable, Bob, with a phrase saying at no cost to the town somehow?
Maybe it's if you another non-town source funding,
Yeah.
just
how do we
make
say
it clear that it's not, we're not gonna ask the residents to pay for the acquisition. Unless we are, like, we wanna buy a lot, and turn it into
Well,
kayak rent.
But what-
That would
I
be
think-
different. That would be
Yeah.
But what if
different.
it's in our best interest at that time to buy that parcel? We don't want to also be eliminated.
I think you should leave it broader and look at specific instances as they
Case by case.
arise.
I don't think we should take that.
Okay.
The language about bounding,
I'm sorry,
what, we shouldn't have what, like,
to say that the town,
Exclusive of
non-town,
town.
exclusive of town money.
Okay.
I don't think we need to do that. I don't think we need to do that.
But they be that specific.
Yeah, I don't.
Was
because
that,
that goes through its own approval process.
Yeah.
To spend,
it has to be vetted out, yes, through the Board of Selectmen, Board of Finance, all of that as a public process.
Okay, that's right.
There's nothing
Yeah,
that's
yeah, it's
just
funding
right.
has to be sourced on.
No,
So that was on yours, is it? Does that satisfy you?
I think I have a totally different opinion on the repetitive loss properties, which does not seem to square with what I guess the rest of the towns that are doing. So I don't like that we're highlighting repetitive loss properties.
as an objective.
You
Yeah,
could strike that, it won't diminish the impact of the goal.
Yeah, that would make sense, because that sounds like it's an objective.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we
very-
could take away the
You can
last
look at it all.
phrase.
yeah.
Because then, if you think about it, repetitive loss is gonna come up as an issue.
Right.
That would be dealt with through normal
Through the
Yes.
processes.
Yeah,
The
I
general
like
process.
that.
Okay, that's fine. Sounds good.
that would make me feel better.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you.
You got that, Erin?
What's that?
Take away the particularly repetitive lost properties phrase.
okay.
Just that last,
This last,
Focus on,
For the last comment.
and in coastal wetland
yeah,
areas,
just.
and ended at that.
Yep.
Thank you.
Is Zoe still with us?
Hi, yes,
Just checking.
got quiet for a moment on your end too, sorry. I am taking notes of the conversation as well.
Okay, great. So we'll make sure
Thanks.
among us all, we'll get it in.
I have 2 and F and then I'm done.
Okay, are we on F?
We don't have to talk about you.
She is
That's all I
good.
wanted to. F, so the first one is, John brought it up as well, supporting establishment, 2 things. Well designed, I don't understand why that needs to be in there, it's not up to us to determine if business is a well-designed business, that's the business owner, and also create policies. We're not gonna be judging MBA by assessing their business opportunity being valid.
I feel like that was added because of the language above in 1, where it was focusing on appropriate scale economic development and trying to, I don't know, reaffirm that.
Clarify it, yeah.
You know, as far as
So you want.
perhaps, you know, or perhaps establishing other, you know, outside of the downtown village district, but perhaps you establish other village districts, others that have other standards. You know how you have a certain level of design standards within, that you can review within a designated village district. So say there was a North Madison Village District, you can establish some level of standards there that you could hold businesses to as far as
Like what?
their the building's
That's
appearance.
different, that's different.
That's more like
I-
character.
I interpret well designed as there's a strong business plan and has a great chance for success. It's built on a solid base and it will flourish. I don't know, if it's well designed, meaning it fits within the
Character of the.
character of what we're trying to create. The
Architectural
architecture, it fits
standards.
within the style of business you want, that's a different thing to me. than
That's
well
more
designed.
like congruent.
That's all. That's what
We're
we're
talking about
that's-
business plans versus
That's why I say something,
Yeah.
I'm
That's
interpreting
because
it
that's
totally
your-
different.
Yeah.
That's why I'm interpreting it, right? To me,
Why
well
we
designed,
have
is like, no, that's a
equal
terrible idea.
conditions.
So what, how else would you word, I mean, I think that added a level of comfort to folks when we were talking about this encouragement of some other economic development within town, but noting that wherever it goes, that it needs to be appropriately scaled. You know, the word character is not
That could be it.
a friendly,
Appropriate.
but that's what's written in one. So did you want to use the same wording?
Don't
Or
just
we could
take-
just ask
take
John
away-
to look for a,
Just take away B.
no, because the
That
point
it's-
was to
Outside the downtown village district.
to allow for some level of appropriate,
But remember now, the idea here is that the goal is to identify opportunities for expanding appropriate scale economic development and
It
services.
doesn't say anywhere.
That's, someone will be assigned that goal, some entity. Then the following must be considered. Anything underneath that is just something we're saying, and you gotta make sure you do this. We at least talk about it or think about it.
And you have retail businesses appropriate for the town. So well-designed businesses, I mean, that implies you're talking about the business itself, not, or are we more concerned about the structure? And being consistent, like,
well, people are, I think in adding commercial development, people are going to look at both uses and the appearance of these buildings.
for the well-designed, was that about the appropriate use, or was that,
Could apply to both, clearly, as we've.
but not, it's not clear, I guess. You're right.
Yeah, I mean, you can interpret it either way, as it's written. Bob had his, Bob, your hand's raised?
No, it just seems to me, well-designed, I don't know what that means, again. I think we're not talking about the structure, or are we? It seems to be whether the business plan of the enterprise is well-designed really isn't our business.
Right, and if it says retail business appropriate for the town.
Appropriate is fine.
Right. So then well-designed business is kind of vague in what it's really talking.
I think the word we're looking to include is aesthetic somewhere.
I think that's what this is
Small.
supposed, this is what.
That's what it means, that's what's missing, but that's what he's getting at. And that makes a lot of sense. Well design means aesthetically appropriate.
That would seem to be the rationale.
So try to find a word,
That's the word to fit in something.
something like that.
Business plan, yeah, something I would use.
Aesthetically.
Oh, yeah, and the last one, the last one is, I need help from you on three, you explained to me what 3B was, I did. I still don't understand 3A, what that means. It's good, just don't understand. Can you explain the
Three, so F,
Bob,
3A,
3A.
3A under,
oh, revising the zoning regulations to simplify the targeted zoning districts that were developed for individual projects and convert to a more comprehensive special development
is
district
that
approach.
all the appendices and stuff and?
The special
No,
exception.
Well, there is a packet that shows where they are.
Yeah.
But this is the entire section 4.1 that are all site-specific,
Yeah,
special
okay.
exception
Trying to harmonize
uses
that.
by
Well,
property.
They name, property,
Yeah,
they
yeah,
define it by the
yeah,
properties
yeah.
around it.
We wanna make sure that
Got it.
as we're updating our zoning regulations, that we find a more appropriate, uniform way of,
Okay. Gotcha.
yes,
Thinking out of
identifying
that,
them.
Putting them into it, I got it, I understand if it's possible, then we'll try to.
Essentially, they were treating special exceptions like little PDDs, but
Yeah,
they weren't doing them.
yeah,
Or
okay,
spot zoning.
Yes, by doing that via special exception, the commission was not following that uniformity clause
yeah,
within,
okay.
throughout the zone.
so
So,
reach it up and see how we can.
yeah, try to find a legal floating type tool to incorporate all of those that were previously approved.
And that's it. Then the only thing I would want to talk about, but want to ask if anyone else has thoughts on any of these would be, the last thing on me is just the implementation plan.
So let's see, is everybody else fine still on the policies if we
Policies are good.
skip to that?
I am.
I have one question on the conclusions, if you want to.
No, go right ahead. Go ahead.
Is that's before our,
We're skipping it.
Yeah, I mean, we did talk about even taking out conclusions. I think we've,
well, some of the conclusion you talked, but the elimination of that may be challenging for Mike Bugda, because in that conclusion is where we summarize a lot of the compliance with the state's plan, the statutes, things like that, but
okay.
let's hear yours, John.
So in the third paragraph there,
Mm-hmm.
let me just read what I sent
See
you.
if I can make it bigger.
The middle of the third paragraph reads to me as if the problem with downtown development, particularly the mixes of businesses and failure of restaurants, is due to the lack of a sewer system. Was that the intention of the wording? I mean, if it was, I don't think that's true. Moxie and Elizabeth didn't close because of wastewater issues. And I think generally, banks, realtors, investments companies want to be in downtown because of, it's an affluent community, and that's where the people are going, and that's where they have visibility. So it kind of read to me like, okay, we're going to blame all those problems on wastewater problems, which I don't think is true.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I don't think that's,
Yeah.
I think septic should be
We can, I think, I don't
studied
think
there,
it,
but-
I don't think, was that the intention? I don't think that was the intention, but the way I read it,
I agree that
it
was.
seems to
Yeah,
be
yeah.
intentional. So maybe just reword it so that, you know, we want to address stormwater management, wastewater issues throughout the town, especially downtown. And we also would like to diversify the businesses within,
Sure.
kind of two different.
That's, yeah, definitely that. Yeah.
So it's the current economy section, sentence that we want to
Yeah,
Yeah,
rework that, so it doesn't seem.
Yeah,
I agree. I think we can,
that can be cleaned up and made better. And it's a good point, John. I mean, it has I think that the lack of a sewage,
But there was
Treatment.
sewer avoidance, right? For
yeah,
years.
well, and it's limited
There is.
sometimes, but it's
There's
not
a
the
water
reason why
restriction.
businesses have failed.
area downtown as
Right,
well.
yeah.
There are septic limitations,
Yeah,
more so in certain properties than others.
Sure, right.
And we do focus on that in the plan and highlight the need to study these areas, both from a engineering perspective and also from an economic development perspective. If we were going to look at some type of centralized system, what does that mean?
Yeah.
And is it worth it? Really?
I mean, I think we'd be foolish to think that that's gonna keep restaurants in business.
Right.
The national turnover on restaurants is every couple of years. People, sometimes they close because they're tired. You know, someone else picks it up, and that's, yeah. Be nice to have a septic system.
Okay,
nothing is more than that.
that's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Correct.
And there's one thing before we go to implementation.
Yes.
Implementation.
I was visiting my grandson who didn't sleep for 3 nights because he was teething and I haven't slept for 3 nights. A little funky.
Fair out there. Yes.
I beg your indulgence and patience. Within the policies and goals, at one point we have I can't remember which one it is now, but there is the goal of, or at least it must include a consideration of the creation of a forest management plan and plan for trees on, land management on
Yeah.
town property. But we did not include, there was a brief discussion we had about the management of trees on private property. I'm not sure, I'm not convinced it should be in this document. I'm not sure, convinced it should not be, but we haven't
Addressed it.
just kind of it's just fell to the
Fran's
side.
gonna speak at that later, if you FYI.
Well, you all spoke about it the other time, so that's what I'm referring to is that conversation we had. So I think we need to talk about it. I mean, part of it is,
This one.
so within a POCD, my inexperience now comes to I don't know how far-reaching into private land rights the POCD would typically go. This is a far-reaching change within Madison public land rights. I'm more comfortable saying the Board of Selection needs to consider it.
Well, I think they're going to be considering, I think that's what you've been working on, right?
Right, I
Is a
just-
draft ordinance
We
for,
all need to talk about it.
The board
and
to
make a
review.
decision Whether we should include it in here.
Where is it here? Sorry.
so in D, number 4, is this increase active management of trees along the public way and within town properties, including the
Right.
development of a forest management plan for town properties.
Right.
So some of this was, you know, the feedback received, and I know I suggested the need for like a tree replacement program. When the town removes trees within the right of way, is there a plan for replacement of these? We did not, all of our previous, up until the more recent tree conversation since the Winter Club clearing, that the feedback you had and when we draft this did not speak to private property. So this is a newer since you've drafted this. So yeah, the question is, do you want to add some language for protection, or do you want to let it go as it's moving course? Now, I understand you have a draft, right, that you're ready to present to the board or to the town?
We have one more week. We've been working on this for, how many, 6 weeks now? We've met 3 or 4 times. We made great progress. We have one more review, next week. So yeah, we're very close.
So it's
And this
going
would
to
go to the Board
evolve
of
during our,
Selectmen As an ordinance?
that's how it's being
Okay.
proposed, right?
It's comprehensive.
Yeah.
It's a proactive management.
Yeah.
Plan. With the word, our use of the word management is different than that use of the word management.
Right.
So that's one point I wanted to make, but to answer your question, it's an ordinance plus a tree advisory commission that
Yeah.
would be looking after replacement
Yeah.
ideas, promoting.
As well as doing an inventory of
Inventories,
important,
know what we have.
historic, old, healthy trees. Yeah, no, I lived in a town
Education
where
of
we
the
had that.
public.
Yeah.
It's the whole thing. But it just, right now, we're still,
Yeah, so thinking of the timing of it, I mean, what can we add to this that would keep it going in that direction? Yeah.
Yeah, if you're ready for.
Are we ready for this
Well, I don't
conversation?
know, you can get through the rest of this and your comments and then leave it up and talk about
We can
trees.
just go through the last part, and then we'll go back to this.
Okay.
I just wanted to bring it up, make sure we didn't lose it. Okay.
Good, so we'll get
Let's
back
go
to
to the
trees.
implementation plan.
I mean, I think that can also, you also have the option of, you can leave what's in your plan and listen to public comment and then consider whether or not you want to address that section or add something else. And that gives some time to let things kind of work through over the next
In the months.
65 plus days.
Yeah. I mean, also, I'm gonna say again, that it's supposed to be a living document. So
We
if
do get it.
the timing of a tree ordinance doesn't work out, I mean, I don't know how long that process will take.
Yeah.
And if we're kind of running neck and neck, or, do we, as you say, do we get feedback and put it in between now and our July?
Or what I was saying was, you can leave what you have, allow them to finish their process, and they may propose something to you during the public comment
Yeah.
of a specific section that they think should be added.
Right.
Another subsection to that, you know, another line item, and that may help as you're working through, you don't have to.
We want to see that.
Yeah.
feedback.
So
I mean,
the-
we're happy to hear something about it tonight too, though, to see where you are and how you're approaching
makes
it.
sense.
Right, the
Put a lot of
public
work into it
hearing
already, it sounds like, yeah.
Is our chance to revise
is for
the
you to
document.
consider the public, you know,
Absolutely.
or anything leading up to that is for you to then consider, you know, maybe it is worthwhile at that point, after things have kind of evolved, and that you add another
That's a good point.
line to that, rather than kind of,
And at least we've got a placeholder here in that statement.
it's easy to add
Yeah.
something along those lines.
Right.
Um,
I think that's.
So let us just run through to the end of the document, and then we'll come back and hear where you are, and we can see where we go from there. How about that?
so are we on implementation? We're okay?
Yes.
The rest of conclusions was all right?
Yeah.
Okay,
Policies are good, conclusions are good.
one question that came through in implementation was whether or not it was worthwhile to put, which I'm now recalling, I think we kind of decided not to, associating any timeframes with high, moderate, low, or ongoing. It may limit you to say years 1 through 3,
Yeah,
4
I don't
through.
think we should.
Okay, I wanted to make sure that we address that before moving. So,
Yeah, just go to page,
oh, I'm sorry.
go to page 64 as an example. And actually, there's
Wait,
one.
I'm sorry.
There you go. So first of all, number 2 doesn't have the lead entity.
Wait, what?
Number 2 doesn't have a lead entity.
Go up. scroll
Policy
up.
A2.
I hit the wrong button.
There you go.
Policy.
Blank box.
It's missing that.
Policy A, number 2.
So I think that was one that we had briefly,
I don't know who. but-
so some of these were, and I talked to John about your concerns with adding Board of Selectmen to them. And the Board of Selectmen will give us feedback on whether or not they think they want nothing to do with some of these things. But the reason in a small town why we added the Board of Selectmen as a lead entity is because they're the ones who would fund and allocate and give direction to one of the committees to do this. So really, they, you know, for example, this master plan, BPAC will likely own it, but the Board of Selectmen needs to give that authority to them. So that's why the Board of Selectmen are involved in some of these as leads.
So it actually goes in the blank box.
So why is that?
That would say, yes, I think that one should have said Board of Selectmen, it was just deleted. But in some of the other ones where Board of Selectmen are noted. And perhaps we'll get feedback from them that says, no, we'd prefer that you put the committee as the leader. And if that's the case and they acknowledge that they're supporting it, that's fine, we can swap those out.
Okay.
That was sort of my approach. Let's hear from them if they,
Yeah. That's fine.
So then what's the reasoning for the other one not being Board of Selectmen? So I understand your point.
well, they're more department handled. So some of these other ones aren't necessary, they don't necessarily fall under a department within a designated department within the town. Does that make sense? Like Beach and Rec,
Right, Conservation Commission's not a department, is it?
no, but by law, they are responsible for creating natural, that's a shall in their statutes. They're the entity for that.
I guess it goes back to if the idea is that they will assign some entity as the lead entity, each one. I understand that, but I'll just be direct. They have been assigned the level of these.
So
I don't think they'll get done.
how about, I mean, they would also, if there's like a master plan, similar to like a strategic plan, they would adopt that plan. So they would be the body that would adopt that master plan.
Right, but not draft it, not, so I guess maybe it's, so as an example, under C4, established fund,
Let's find.
established funding for the protection and restoration of historic landmarks through grants and other sources. They're gonna assign that to someone. I'd rather just assign it to that someone now. And so you can see if there's too much being. It's also
Established
resource
funding for the protection of this one and restoration of historic landmarks through grants and other sources.
allocation. That kind of what the Historic District Commission would do.
They don't have the authority to
I
establish
think
any
it's the
funding.
funding side of it that falls back or goes back up to the board. of Selectmen.
That's,
Recommend funding. I don't know. And I'm new with this, when I see that menu assigned to the executive function within the organization, my gut says it'll never get done. That's just telling you straight. I know I'm being recorded and everyone's gonna hate it, but that's okay. It's just my gut reaction to that is that's too much on their plate to get done, unless the direction is, we don't know, you pick the person.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with that.
Or, because they know funding and budgets and staffing,
We can change the wording to
yeah.
establish a budget for the protection, establish the required necessary funding. Not that they get it, but someone has to tell them how much they need.
I mean, in reality, a lot of this, when it's a board or a commission, is gonna fall on staff to be assisting these commissions to get stuff done. I mean, that's
Board of Selectmen are
But
not
why I'm on
doing
my
this work.
fourth meeting this week.
Part of it
So
too
you-
is resource allocation, right? So if we do it the right way, we'll be able to highlight that there's not enough resource. Let's say the Historic District Commission ends up on 20 of these. That's not gonna get done either because there's too much for
Well,
one.
and I'll say as a alternate for the Historic District Commission, I mean, I know, Aaron, you and I have talked about this too, that, when it came time, like for 10 years, they were saying, let's get certified local government status. And it never happened, and then I just did it. So it takes like one person, that it's sort of the
It does,
opposite
and
of
I
the Board
really-
of Selectmen. It goes down to like one person who's just gonna take this on and do
And
it.
I think part of this is we're at a good point because with the adoption of the most recent charter, all of these boards and commissions need to be, that are not established via charter, need to be established by the Board of Selectmen via ordinance.
And that's in the.
And they had 2 years to do that, so this is the last year to establish these commissions. So that's why we've been working with the commissions now, developing charges. And so having the timing of this, you can build some of this language into these commissions as their responsibilities. So, and now we're having open conversation between the Board of Selectmen who are appointing them to do these jobs. And so perhaps that's all they're doing at this point. And now it's the commission who needs to take the lead and say, okay, look, we've come up with this RFP, we need to do this, or hire a consultant to do this.
Get this
It's
grant.
gonna cost this much money. Now we're to you looking for the funding and the resources to help do that.
I think it's in the strategic plan too, of the restructuring of committees
Well,
and commissions.
there's a consolidation thing, and that's
Yeah.
another point why sometimes the Board of Selectmen, my recommendation was to put them as the lead entity, because we've talked about definitely consolidating the number. We have an overwhelming amount of committees and commissions, and we would like to condense some of them and merge. And the Coastal Resiliency Commission is a good example. They will not be known as the Coastal Resiliency Commission. And perhaps will change their future name to this. They're going to be the Climate Resiliency and Flood and Erosion Control Board. So we're merging the Flood and Erosion Control Board with the Coastal Resiliency Commission into one. We've talked about having a more cohesive historic presence in town or preservation of our resources. perhaps representative from the Historic District Commission, the Historical Society, getting some of these groups together to think a little broader beyond their own scope. So, but those groups haven't yet been established. So kind of landing it in the board, we've had conversations about this, but nothing has been formalized yet.
Okay.
So
I get what you're saying. Yeah, I get
it's
it.
not perfect.
But would it, so to that. Would it be more on the point than to leave them as blank? So there is no lead entity because we could not identify the appropriate lead entity, and where there is no one, the Board of Selectmen needs to choose or establish a commission to own this.
I don't see a problem with you giving it to them. If they're unhappy, they'll let you know.
I don't see a problem with that.
I'd rather give it to someone than not give it to anyone.
It'll get resolved eventually is what your point is.
I don't think it should be left blank. So I think that looks like we're not finishing our job.
I put down the action one, fill in the blanks.
How about we get feedback from selectmen?
That's a good idea, okay, that's good.
Yeah.
I've sent it to them, you know, for comment, and I think they will.
If we can address with them how they want us to address the 11.
Responsibilities.
Well, and maybe that's a good conversation
Yeah.
when Carol and I
Yeah.
go
Yeah. The
on
29th
the
meeting.
29th to say, look, you're gonna see your name a lot.
That would be good, that would be good.
And this is the reason why we put your name here.
Because we do have a
Would
chance
you
to
rather
revise this
not?
again. I'm fine with that. I just I want to push the issue a little bit. It just screams to me that.
Well, and I agree with you that if you just leave it Board of Selectmen, it could just disappear into a black hole.
I liked it, so.
We'll bring it up at the meeting. I think that's the best.
Well, I mean, you know, moving beyond this plan, although it's not written in here, you know, you can help facilitate the implementation of this plan by inviting representatives from some of these other, you know, entities as a working group to meet quarterly, every other month to say, hey, let's check in on this. Are you guys doing that? Or, you know, that kind of stuff.
I agree. I like.
As I just told you, we don't need another committee.
I like that. If we can.
But that could work too.
But an oversight,
Brings the board.
quarterly
Selectmen, ask them
check-in.
To weigh in. on what
Yeah.
they-
Then it doesn't sit on a shelf.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree.
I'm good with that. That works.
Did anyone find any of these that, I mean, so the policy, the action items are specifically cut from the policies. Those shouldn't change, but they will, whatever changes we make in the policies will reflect in the implementation table, so we're uniform. But I mean, aside, I have not heard any feedback from any of the stakeholders that I, you know, the commissions or boards that I sent these to, complaining yet that they've recognized their name in here. Because most of them have given us this feedback.
Yeah.
But if you, I mean, this is the one that I haven't really heard back from you guys. I mean, I just filled it in what I thought
You're the expert.
was appropriate, but I'm open to,
I think it looks great.
I was-
if you think
I
we
was
forgot
happy.
anything.
And you and I have talked about a couple of inconsistencies, like make sure it's moderate and high, not medium and high.
I saw that in one of them too,
And
yes.
then policy G has under one, undertake empirical assessment, blah, 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 including, that was from a previous edit and
Yes.
including needs to go.
There it is.
G1, yep.
Yeah. And I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the state draft, but the number of policies they have, I think is 7.
Yeah.
Hey.
That seems to be a magic number.
With 7, yes.
But, and I think it strengthens the policies to have it. Because have it
Yeah.
implemented this
Oh,
way.
definitely, yeah.
For sure.
So
I'm in agreement.
Bob does not have his hand raised, but I can stop sharing if you're ready, or did you want to go through more?
I have nothing else to keep it up. I will no longer.
Keep it up for you?
You have till Monday.
No, I'm not.
Okay, great. Well, that was
Thanks
really
Thanks for
good
that.
though. I
Time's
mean,
up. It is what it is.
to get us all to really sit down and go through it together, I'm really happy with that. Circling back to trees.
First of all, I want to say, you guys, I am so impressed. I'm really proud of what you guys are doing here. No, I am. I mean, this is a tough thing you're doing. And you've got the patience, you know, and the politeness and the empathy. You're doing it.
And a little sense of humor from
Well, it's such a- Yeah, I don't know how to do it. You guys are doing good.
I think we had that sense of humor in the early
Or
months.
low points.
It's month 20, it kicked in.
Giddiness.
The beginning, we weren't.
Just reintroduce myself, Fran Brady, 108 Genesee Road, co-founder of Mad for Trees, member of a team of 7. Half of them are here, that we've been assigned by you and the board, well, the board selected officially assigned us to look into writing a tree ordinance. By the way, it's going to be written so well, this guy's not going to be flabbergasted. You're going to love it. It's going to be, I've already seen it. It's well written. I had a couple points. First thing, following Robert Reiner's approach to this, if you could go to policy B2C, I just have a recommendation.
Under policies,
Yeah.
not.
Oh, back up the top, yeah, the very
Yeah.
highest level. As the author, founder,
Oh, no, they're.
main participant, and spouse of every single example shown on that one, you don't need to have the examples there. I agree, with, you know, that approach, take them out. Mad for Trees,
Actually, we talked about that at
We
other
did.
meetings.
yeah.
Yeah, should we? put
Mad
this
for
in?
Bees, my wife, it doesn't exist anymore. It's the Madison pollinator pathway.
Right,
So there's no map for bees, but there's a pollinator pathway. But that's the point. These change, they flux, they
yeah,
change
so
names.
just take it out.
Take it up.
As an example, take it out. The single use, I wrote that ordinance, it's done. You don't have to put it up there anymore. No mow
Okay.
May, it's gonna be no mow April. I mean, because
Yeah,
climate
that's the
change.
pollinators are.
Yeah, it's too late. by the way.
So anyway, I just wanted to follow that approach.
Thank you.
Happy to take it out.
The real reason I was here was seeing what you wrote. I got 2 points I want to, and I'll read if you don't mind. I'll be brief. The most recent draft, this working draft of the new POCD does not mention tree preservation. It only uses the word management. And a cynical person could also say that this actually sounds like you're in favor of thinning out the forest. You know, that's the kind of words they use. They manage the forest by burning things and cutting, so I'm a little sensitive about the word management. I hope you don't feel that way. The one we're under now, the 2013 POCD, has good wording. Why can't we go back to it? We would like to see the wording like regulations to address clear cutting of trees. That's what was in there before. Clear cutting of trees is a big concern of ours. So I'm just concerned about the change in emphasis. There's probably a reason. The second point I wanted to make is that through our work of developing the ordinance, we've done a lot of research, and UConn has a group called CLEAR, but they have,
Yes.
they have the forest fragmentation study online. You can put your town in and it will pull up data about tree canopy. It's all there. In fact, I think the whole country has this, but UConn is the holder of ours. And based on that satellite data, let's see, the tree canopy of the town of Madison has lost more than 6% of its canopy since 1985. That's up to 2015. So from 1985 to 2015, we lost 6%. That's almost 1,000 acres we lost. And there's work that says conservatively 1,000 acres is equal to 100,000 trees. So that's up to 20,000. That's up to 2018. Since 2018, things gotten worse with the drought and the bugs and the weather. So I just got a text from Scott Murphy showing me a beech tree in his backyard that had snapped. I said, I'm immune to these now because they're snapping everywhere, not just beech trees, oak tree. Why? I don't know. I'm not the expert.
Part of it is higher winds.
I mean, but we had a drought for a long time. We really
Yeah.
weakened the trees.
And now we're in like a kind of
And now-
flood
In
era.
mud areas, now we're gonna have roots coming up. All I'm saying is,
Yeah.
there's data that shows we lost 1,000 acres. guess what? We've lost a lot more than that since then,
And no
Just out of
replacement.
just out of curiosity.
and no replacement.
Does that 1,000 acres, I know what I'm talking about, does that 1,000 acres include, or would it now include what the utility company's doing?
Yes.
You know, okay,
Yeah,
so
it's-
even though,
it's-
even though it's there, we have no say over that.
Right, no, I agree. The point is, it's an uphill battle.
But it's included in our overall loss, is the
Yes.
number they did. So if you back that out, are the numbers as dramatic as where I was?
Good question.
Probably more dramatic.
They've separated them out.
It's gonna be more dramatic now, but if you took that back, would they be still advancing more so? We don't know, because the data is now 8 years old.
All I know is that when you compare us, all the towns, 169 towns in Connecticut, we are dark green. We're not the darkest green, we're dark green, and that, the darker you are, the greater the percentage of loss of trees is. So as what we could control,
We're mapping this with-
Eversource wasn't in that study at that time. So
Yeah.
under our control, we have not done anything to improve things. I mean, it's only gotten worse. That's just my point of it. And so preservation, or no, planting, restoring is an important factor of what we're gonna put in in our tree committee part of this. So I wasn't prepared to give you an update on what we've got done so far. I was here to comment on the way this is evolving. And maybe I'm repeating what I said before. The plan of conservation and development had some good things in it, and now they're missing. I hope we could.
So that word, change to the word management is troubling.
It's troubling in that single sentence, the way it is. If it had maybe some backup bullet points underneath it, maybe I'd feel better.
I think management came from Heather. Heather came to the meeting and said, we need to have forest management.
If you look at what I presented, it was proactive management. So
So I think
again, but that came.
that
from
was the
PowerPoint.
context of
The context, I agree.
of where the word management came from.
Because I
And then,
remember we had a big discussion
We
about
had-
changing that. and
Yeah, we did.
Thinking that we were doing right.
Well, maybe I'm looking for just a couple more words to go
Adding
with it.
proactive with
Sorry,
that?
Yeah.
the
proactive.
principles of what management means, kind of.
Yeah.
Or
I think
proactive
that can
management
come-
and preservation?
I'd kind of like to
Say
see what you guys bring out.
If you wanted to.
Say what?
Silviculture is actively managing forests, but that's not really what we're talking about. That's for the forests up in the northern part.
Right.
Water district, where they manage the trees. They even earn some.
But part of our presentation included, like you said about the wetlands, having the right staffing. That's in there. I wouldn't mind seeing that as part of management, and more educated staff to do it. So the same thing that you wrote for inland might go well with the tree part of this. That's all I have to say.
And feel free to send us edits
Yes.
if you want to make those edits.
Yeah,
Um,
Oh,
do you have language that you'd like to see?
I think that's a great opportunity for the public
Yeah.
part, because I think that gives you time to release what your ideas are. It's going to be discussed a little bit. It also gives you an opportunity to kind of hear from
And understand
not just
why
your
that
working
language
group,
is
but the public as well at the Board of Selectmen meeting to kind of formulate some additional points that you'd recommend for that section.
Another issue that
I think
that's come up in conversation is, having like solar panel farms where you clear cut and then put in solar panels, and every time I see
in
one now, I
Westbrook.
just kind of
No, don't do
cringe.
that.
Like what was lost to,
Don't do that.
what's,
I just stayed at a hotel last night in Philadelphia where I was there a year ago. In that year, they put up solar panels all over the whole entire parking lot. It's huge. It's as big as downtown, all these overhead solar panels.
On non-permeable surfaces.
That's what we should do. Don't cut down trees to
Right.
put solar panels. up.
right,
I'm in that business. So
Yeah.
there's been a number of non-permeable surface acts arose, no one will go for it. It's very expensive to put up those solar canopies. They're carports or canopies on top of decks, just mainly because of the cost of steel post-pandemic. But there are ways in defense of, I'm not in favor of clear cutting, but there are ways in certain areas of land that
it's nice to put the solar in it, and you can have active management, pollination trails, you can have, grass to grow, there's agri-voltaics, there's a lot of things around there, so it's just a plug, but it doesn't, it's not bad, it's just.
There's a way to do it.
There's a way to do it, and there's a way not to do it, and where everything's heading, especially in Connecticut, is really moving that to brown fields and to, cap landfills, superfund sites, that type of stuff, quarries, aggregate places, where, there's remediation needs to be done anyway.
Maybe one last thing I'd throw out to Aaron here. There's gonna be a discussion I'm gonna have with a number of different people in the town about building a coalition of groups that are into keeping Madison green. And we're thinking of a catchy name like Sustainable Madison Coalition. But trying to tie together.
Are you gonna
essence-
spearhead the certification process?
I would be glad to put that as a bullet point underneath one of the things we do, but we'll have trees in there, we'll have bees on there, we'll have,
I think that's what's made other towns successful, is having a broader.
but it's not gonna be part of the town, it'll be more private, but we can help support the town in reaching their goals.
Well, I mean, that's the only way really the and that's the way the certification process is designed, is for the town to truly implement these into their regular operations. And that's what's making it challenging, I think, now, is because it's so piecemealed. And having a small group with the Conservation Commission working towards that certification is.
And I'm looking at having a coalition of, dozens of people to move into the direction to, get things accomplished.
Did you
Thank
have
you.
something you wanted to say too?
Yes, so I just wanted to.
Can you identify yourself?
My name's Amy Thomas, I'm at 34 River Edge Road. Just echoing what Fran said, I've been involved since, I've been concerned for a while, but involved in the past couple months. Contacted Aaron in January, came here in February. Aaron had shared the working draft with me, and just echoing what Fran said, I mean, my concern is, we talk a lot about supporting our natural resources, and there's one mention of trees in the document.
I guess we think it's assumed that we all know that, but if it needs to be said,
Yeah,
we need to hear you tell us that,
Yeah, and I think that's the point. I mean, this document is important, what we're trying to do is important, but it's also just a kind of, hopefully a mentality that we can all adopt, that trees are resources that need to be protected and preserved. There's so much great support of the wetlands and the coastline. There's just like a great emphasis on Madison being a coastal town, but there's also a lot of trees and forests and a lot of mature trees. And I just really, really love to see that support and that, breadth of thinking around, that strategy and maintenance. So yeah, I came tonight to just make that, sort of reiterate the request. I think it's 4D now, the one
where we
line
talk about trees.
One tree.
Yeah, increase the active management of trees. I had just said, it'd be great to extend preservation efforts to literally call out trees, so it's not considered, like just the swaths of forests in northern Madison, but actually trees across the whole town, and just recognizing their importance within the whole ecosystem.
We had conversations about how to define open space, and I'm thinking of it too, more sort of maybe more holistically of ecosystems, so when you say wetlands, to me, that includes trees. Of course it does. Or, some precious little salt meadow trees that, we just sort of assume, but if it needs to be said, then we should say it.
Yeah, and I don't, I would like to see it because it's kind of one of the lines Bob was saying. It's like, we're just assuming it, but why not say it?
Get it in there, yeah. And again, state land, water company land, private land, And, you know, I cringe anytime I see a tree come down too.
And replacement, maybe we should also.
Which Mad for Trees has done a great job, I think, of, you know, getting the word out and getting us, although my tree was only this big.
Policy B, talks about, you know, natural resources. I mean, trees are a natural resource. And supporting education on them, focusing environmental stewardship. I mean, that language is in here. Incorporating educational programs, creating a public portal on education and providing resources about the natural environment. That could be very broadly
Right.
used to address.
But I think it might, I agree, 'cause that's, was there. You know, the intent was to educate everyone on what's important.
And then also expanding the community's engagement in natural resource stewardship programs. So there's language there that could support any of those.
Yeah.
It doesn't call, I mean, it doesn't call out trees specifically, but I don't think it excludes trees either, the way that it's.
I think one thing I was concerned about was if it's not promoted in a way in the P O C D, it was in 2013, if it's not in the current one, and we're being asked to draft a tree ordinance, they should be in agreement. There should be something in the P O C D
That you can reference.
that supports.
Yeah.
I mean, if we're gonna.
Why you're doing the ordinance.
Right. And when it doesn't say that, somebody could say, it's not even in here. It was in, yeah, it was in 2013. It's not in here now. You clearly left it out for a reason. A tree ordinance should be shot down.
We have.
So,
The 2013.
I don't think that.
The
Pull it up, but,
Can you pull it up?
well, an ordinance, I think that was the suggestion of the board that that concerned residents came to the board asking for change, and the board said, if you'd like, show us something, show us what you want, right, what you're proposing. So I think, I don't see how that's inconsistent with
especially if they say.
anything that I don't think anybody could look at that and say that's not something that's
Yeah,
supported by the
You're
POC.
just saying they're two separate things.
Protect tree
How do we tie them
canopies.
together
Which is.
so that it's clear from anybody reading?
It is more clear.
Well, my recommendation on that would be to get further along in your process, because we still have time to add language. Let this develop a little bit, fine tune, and then come back with a more specific, something that encompasses that as a line item.
Yeah, we'll do,
If we should, if that's the task, if we should actually write the line items,
I just think this is gonna get vetted, right, over the next 2 months at some
But
point.
it had been brought up and it had not been included, so that's part of the concern.
But we can write something.
Sure.
Yeah.
So if you look
I think
at
that would be
policy B, goal number 4, which is.
This is the first we've heard that we could be off.
What letter is that?
Take
Oh,
that.
4D.
You can turn
Leave it out.
4D into a goal of tree preservation or something. A could be the active management of trees along public way, B could be, C could be.
Yes.
And so drafting that language then would be helpful. And go forward
you
with
can
our
consider,
process and
yeah.
then bring it up at the public hearing on what we're looking for.
That'd be great.
Because we have to wait, we just keep pushing everybody.
So did Zoe get that?
Zoe's listening, yeah.
Well, Zoe's not gonna draft it.
No, you were.
We're gonna leave this, and then that was
No, that part. I thought-
That'll let the ordinance, that'll allow you to move forward with the ordinance, right? And then depending, if you get the ordinance, then maybe everything we need, you may not need anything in the POCD. But if not, policy D, goal 4 is where you would expand.
Well, we should point to it as you were.
That's what I'm saying. Would you be?
Yeah, and you can point to exactly, if you get the ordinance, you can point to it.
Would having wording about a tree ordinance
Yeah.
and the P O C D be fine, even before it's been vetted totally?
my personal opinion is that you should
I would say
kind of
yes.
bring this out and keep continuing on your path before we change
Okay, fine.
a specific language in that?
This is great. No, what's new today for me is that I can be an author of the POCD. You know, I could be a contributing author.
Well, anyone can
Yes.
suggest, I mean, that's what this process has been, and so I think
You've been assigned 40.
based on your homework.
Be aware, could be edited
Yeah,
later.
61 days.
Yeah, you know that line we always say?
No, we'd appreciate that. And it's great to have a, face-to-face
Yeah, it's
conversation
wonderful.
about it. And I think we all kind of agree with you, so I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, I don't see an issue at all.
Would it make sense to just at a minimum, just for number 4 there, add active management and preservation of trees?
I like
Happy to.
preservation and also
Proactive.
Going in, as a going in.
Great. And on just the statement, so on the active management and preservation.
And renewal, I mean, we've got to talk about replacement.
Replanting.
I think that is,
Is that implied?
That's part of
that I saw that as part of the management.
But I think when
Right.
they're saying
But, yeah,
management
I-
means something different,
Could be, yeah. Yeah.
that's where we don't,
Misused,
yeah,
yeah. It's like
we
a
don't want to
code
say the wrong word.
4 does not apply to private property. I mean, that's,
Right.
that line item does not
That's
address
self-property.
your other.
And just-
The other aspect of private property, I think, would be under really more that natural resources section and the educational and that,
I'm just,
where that
I
is
I
now.
disagree. The policy E is about sustainability of natural resources.
Public and private.
Public and private. And so what you're saying is correct. In the above one, you're talking about policy B, right?
Well, I'm just saying this line does not apply
And
to private.
And my suggestion was to take that line and make it item A and create a new goal of preservation, blah, 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 of trees, whatever you all say. Start the drafting and we'll have to own it and change it as we
Yeah.
need to make it fit. But get it, if you create that higher level goal, and then underneath it is your land management on public, tree management on public town's property. And then some other thing that references the ordinance or something that the ordinance is trying to achieve as another, it should also, it must consider A and B underneath. So you got.
I don't, yeah, but you haven't seen any draft language for an ordinance.
I'm not saying we don't, no, but we're not, that's why
Just
we're not doing it
in-
now.
How we can edit this to
We're
make
not
it.
doing it, no, I would say we don't change anything now, otherwise we'll be.
Yeah, we're never gonna get a document
Say
out
this
to the
is- If
public.
everyone's agreement, we can say this is done and we can move forward with the public, schedule the public hearing.
I think we should. I
This
think
comes
it's so-
forward
we're gonna
at
get
the
such
public hearing.
important feedback. You know, like we are from you now. I mean, that's great.
Did you want to say something else?
Yeah, it's all less necessary, and I appreciate this conversation, but I did want to, trees are not the only issue I care about, but when we see the lack of inclusion in there, which is why I'm glad it's being spoken about, especially compared to coastal protection and coastal resiliency, those cannot be, those are much less likely to be subject to misuse, and, you know, we've had experiences, the Winter Club, notably in a private residence also that came before you, and you had to deal with it after the fact because people can claim that they didn't know. And I think we want to live in a town where people can't claim they didn't know, and what they should know is what I think what this group is going to help define. And that all seems like a part of, you know, this fabulous document you've all put together, but it does seem like there's a little bit of a, not a blind spot, because no one here is blind to it, but could certainly use more attention.
Well, and I think after the POCD is finished, then we also are talking about taking on the zoning regulations, and, you know, I don't know if it would be appropriate in there, Erin, but I don't think we have very much.
I don't know what you're proposing.
Yeah.
What, you know, what you're specifically proposing from a regulatory sense. So I can't, that's where I'm a little, I don't know how to word this. I don't know that I'm necessarily going to agree with everything that you know.
And we'd like to talk to you about it too.
So I
because
think,
is it an
not that I
ordinance or
wouldn't-
is it a standard and all that? So
that's why I don't,
too detailed.
I don't know what you're proposing. So it sounds like it's wide and fairly broad, that you have an educational component and a management component, and it sounds like there's this piece of management of tree cutting on private property. And so some of that, I think, you know, versus a single family house versus a commercial property, some of those, some of those things,
2 o'clock
I think,
at the library.
I think that is, you know, I don't wanna, I would prefer to leave
Aaron, I'm
the
serious. I'm
regular,
serious.
you know, the
Take money.
POCD broader. I have no idea right now. I'll
But there-
look on my calendar,
We
Fran.
invited the tree warden
But
for
I
every
mean-
meeting. He is too busy to come. You are allowed to
But
come.
I don't, you know, so I'm not opposed to think, but you know, I think it's premature to add language to support an ordinance that no one has seen, or a language that hasn't, but, so my thought on that was,
It's a horse and
leave
cart.
things,
Yeah, what if you
and
wanted
then-
it to exist?
Yeah.
It, pro-
Right,
it doesn't.
so
We
to
can
well,
me-
what the commission might want may not be, it may not make you happy,
So
you
to
know,
me-
or what comes out of this, there may be a balance.
My thought is
So-
that this, we will, we'll present something and it'll get modified and we will end up with a tree ordinance. There's no question about it.
Right, but there's a,
There
so
has to be a give and take.
the idea of the ordinance is you want to enforce some goal or reach some. So I think if you stated the goal and made that clear,
State the goal first.
yeah, and then the ordinance is written then we could probably understand the goal.
But it
So
doesn't
that
seem like
language,
the POCD should actively avoid that goal just because, you know, there's a tree
No, I
ordinance in
think
the
I
works.
don't think it is.
You can
No.
strengthen it.
I mean,
Yeah, we're just looking to strengthen.
Yeah,
Right,
and
so
then
that,
you can refer to that when you go through the ordinance. I think that makes sense.
That's great.
and then the details and how you execute it is either an ordinance or recommendations or whatever.
You and I think, are aligned. My thinking was, we leave the P O C D the way it is now. If we go to change it, it's gonna take a couple more weeks by the time we get together, have what you say, edit the whole thing. If we go with what we have now, with the idea that the work on the ordinance continues, and in 60+ days, there'll be a public hearing wherein we can react to the public's comments specific to management of trees on private land and public land.
it's great feedback for you to
Right.
gain consensus
And if
on
that
the
feedback came in
appropriate
the
wording.
form
I
of,
agree with that, that makes.
here's a new goal under policy D, which includes the public land and what we would love to see for private land, that then gives us the material to work with and craft it to something we can put in the P O C D.
So that would format your comment or,
You want Fran to
Frame
read
your
something
comment.
now, or?
No, I think continue working on your ordinance.
No, it's
No.
always been, that's why I want to make sure we're communicating. I'm afraid of delaying the continuation of the P O C D now.
Right.
It seems like for the
You
most
just put
part,
in one word of preservation.
on the current
Yeah.
board D, I
I
think.
thought we got
I
even
thought we were
maybe.
going to.
Yeah, I thought we were going to.
Yeah, we can do that. That's
Okay.
one
Oh,
word
okay.
on that's one word on the public side. But then there's still,
Oh, yeah, no. Yeah. I think we can do that, right?
Yeah.
One word.
In number 4.
yeah, number 4.
Increase active management and preservation of trees along the public right of way and within town properties, including the development of forest management plans for town properties. And then anything beyond that, work through your process, provide during the public comment period for the commission to consider as, and, you know, edits and then adoption.
Guys, let me say something here. I think we're repeating ourselves now. And I think we've reached a consensus, at least the commission has. And for you guys, let me suggest that I think as people have said, this gives you a great opportunity to see where you're going to get pushback and exactly on what. My suspicion is, I'm talking with a couple of folks, by no means a random sample, people who are pro-tree, but who are concerned that if they have a tree that seems to be about to fall on their roof, they don't want the township telling them that they can't remove that tree.
Yeah, that would never happen. You're always allowed to cut a dead, dangerous tree. That's never an issue.
Not something that for right now. So, fine.
Are we good?
Good.
Thank you.
Okay, good.
And I have one more question after trees.
I thought you were happy at the last
I
meeting.
am, yeah, I hate leave now, and sometimes it's hard to accept yes. One question, I saw policy D2, support remediation restoration of tidal wetlands, seems to have dropped out.
Thank you.
No, that's on here.
See, oh, it is? Okay,
Yeah, and with an A and B under it, those did
Great.
not leave.
yeah, because that was Coastal Resilience Commission wanted that in. Okay.
That's, yep, D2, it's all there.
Excellent. Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Oh, can I have that back? Because I have bank statements
Oh,
and
I
cartoons
think
of
it got it right
There
there.
it is.
all cartoons of the back
Your
of all
pen.
planning members.
Thanks. Okay, next on the agenda.
Good night.
Where is the agenda?
Thank you, Zoe. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Zoe.
I'll send you an
Good
email.
night.
with
Okay,
my-
yeah, and I tried to get as many notes on as possible. There's a few times where it was hard to hear, but I
Okay,
think I got all the major things, so
okay, appreciate your time, thanks.
have a great night.
You too.
You too. Pending applications, I don't know if we need to go over this very much, Erin.
No, it's just placeholder, so you know what's,
Placeholders coming.
what's coming up.
Nothing new, thankfully. Okay, approval of minutes.
Sure.
Terry, use that.
March 21st, 2024 meeting, members present, Snow, Duza, Balance, Reinhardt, Bugdale, Peckinpah, O'Connor, and Morgan. Motion to approve. Michael, second. Bob, any edits, comments? Corrections, I didn't see any. Vote to approve.
Approved. Great, thanks.
Madam Chair, the one thing I realized is that the commission did not set the public hearing date of July, formally set the public hearing date of July 11th, so I don't know if you want to,
Oh, so going back. to
a motion to open back up the arrangement and go back to the P O C D quickly
Or we
to,
can, yeah, just add it as an item even, as, you know, setting the date for the P O C
Can we
D
do that?
hearing.
it is part of one, but you, we just kind of moved on quicker than.
Yeah, we kind of announced it, didn't vote on it. Okay, so could I have a motion going back to our plan of conservation and development update? Setting the public hearing date, time and location? Actually, should we do
So
time
moved.
and location as well?
So actually, it's your regularly scheduled meeting, which is in this room. I can check for availability for a larger room, to see if the Hammonasset room, which
That would be a
fits
good idea.
slightly more, it's still a hybrid. But I will try that
And
for
we
you
will be
if that's,
publicizing that meeting as well on the, you know, through the town website and through announcements saying there's going to be a public hearing. This is your chance to speak out about the P O C D.
right. But if it's available, I'll book the Hammonasset room for that as a special location since it's a little bigger.
Okay. So, do we have a motion? Moved, sorry. Second,
Oh, sorry.
any further discussion? All in favor, July
All
11th?
in favor, July 11th.
Great, thank you all. Any further remarks, discussions?
No.
Me-
Can I ask a
Thank you.
Yeah.
question
John Moran.
about, the Winter Club is what they stopped? That they stopped all construction at the Winter Club?
Looks like it, doesn't it?
Do we know, is there something we should know?
No,
They
nothing's
weren't
been done for a
issued
couple
any
weeks.
orders to stop anything. I believe they're working with DOT regarding access, and I believe that you'll be receiving an application soon to amend their site plan and their master plan, changing their
Maybe that's why.
entrances. So they may have just held off on some things or
Working
have
on
been
it.
on
'Cause
holiday.
they were
I don't
so
know.
active and then all of a sudden.
Nothing.
I have no idea. I don't know that that's for any reason. It wasn't anything from our, you know, any of our
They were
regulatory.
moving so
They were so
quickly,
quickly moving.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I assume they're trying for a summer opening, but
Okay.
the septic system is still above ground.
Yes.
It's so wet
That doesn't take
too,
long.
you know, the weather's been
Yeah, maybe
limiting
the
with
weather's
the wet, so I don't know.
Okay.
Could be contractor delays, I have no idea.
Any other comments, questions, remarks? Motion to adjourn,
Motion to
wait a
adjourn.
minute, second, Any discussion? In favor, adjourned at 9:07.